Hi, Sue. Welcome. Nice to see you. How are you?
Oh, I'm really well, thank you. Really well. Kind of be back into the swing of the new year, unsuccessfully.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us today. So we're going to talk about your B Corp journey. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your agency and what made you decide to become a B Corp.
No problem. So, my business next year will be 20 years old. So, we're fairly well established business. We're a brand transformation agency and work with clients as large as Amazon Fresh and as small and beautiful as So the City, a not-for-profit in Manchester. And we do a range of work from them, from brand experience projects, brand strategy projects, through to TV campaigns. We really do enjoy working across a range of sectors and a range of channels. We're a female-founded business, so my business partner and I have worked together for just about forever, for the whole of our careers. We started at McCann together, and then we are now here 20 years later. And so B Corp for us really felt like the recognition of all the work that we'd done for 20 years. We were really, really conscious that the area that we didn't have any real depth of understanding in, or how we could create impact, was around sustainability. But what B Corp is, as you know, is obviously significantly more than that. So the 4 pillars of workers, governance, customers, and community, we're actually really, really strong in. But we thought if we moved towards B Corp, it would help us energise that sustainability part of what we were doing.
Fab. Okay. And when you first heard of B Corp, can you remember when you first heard about B Corp?
Gosh, probably 4 or 5 years ago. We were interested probably from the beginning of it. But yeah, and you know what? I think one of the issues B Corp still has is just that. It's like nobody really knows what it does. You're starting to see it gaining some traction, and you're starting to see big retailers like John Lewis use it as a way of enabling them to differentiate themselves and bring more brands into the fold. But I think, I think we heard about it, and I do feel like it's assigned to sustainability, and that for us was the appeal in the early stages, until you realise how much more it is, and how much more it's about societal and social impact. It's bigger than I certainly thought it was.
Yeah, and I think also with the standards changing this year as well, I think it will become known for more of the impact areas than it has done previously. But I do agree.
Yeah.
I think the people that might have heard about it 4 years ago might have only seen it as an environmental accreditation.
Yeah.
So I do hear from others that you might they hear about it through a coffee with a friend, or it might have been a client.
Yeah,
Might have been a candidate. So certainly in my previous agency experience, we found that candidates were asking, were we a B Corp, and still see that now in interview stage. So
yes,
the workers in the environment section certainly are the most well known.
Yeah.
So your B Corp journey then. So how did you start it?
We started by talking to a few other agencies. So we work with a brilliant agency consultancy in Liverpool called Form, and we went to one of their events and heard from other agency owners that had been on that journey, and then we started playing with the impact assessment and just tried to understand, where we were, what our benchmark was. And as I say, because we are already really focused on workers, community, and customer, quite quickly we realised that we could go above the score. The benchmark at the time when we did it was 80, and so we quite quickly realised that we could get above that without really doing anything else. And it's obviously an incredibly detailed process that you go through, but actually our starting point was just to do that impact. assessment and work out whether we could do it, whether it was possible.
And then who did you involve? So often when I work with businesses, it's about working out who's going to be involved in that project, and we often have some conversation around whether it'll be quicker to do it in a small group, or do we need to involve everybody? Like, who did you involve?
Yeah, so my office manager and I did it primarily in the first instance. So we did all the groundwork. We did absolutely everything, and it's only in the latter stages where we started to think about, and actually particularly in year 2, where we start to think about, okay, what more can we do, that we've involved the wider agency. But in the accreditation process, that was very much just Kate and I wading through it.
Yeah. And how do you get people involved now? So how do you have like a project team, or does everyone just know about it and get involved, or how does it work?
Yeah, so we're a small business. There's 11 of us, so everybody knows about it in the agency. So that starts with it being part of our induction process. So we talk to people about the importance of it and what it means to us. It's also built into our credentials as an agency. So we talk about 3 founding beliefs: behaviour first. Our business is about behavioural science, brand memorability, and business for good. So we're talking to clients constantly about it, and therefore it lives in the agency all of the time because we're constantly talking. But then we have monthly sessions called sunshine sessions. Oh, in other words, that's sunshine sessions, where we report on things like our impact from a sustainability viewpoint. We tell people how many trees we've planted and that kind of thing. And then where there's specific projects, where for example, for workers last year, we did a whole piece around competency and how we improve performance. We have a team that specifically looks like that. So the projects that we've outlined this year that we want to do, there's more community-based projects. There's some HR initiatives around working from home that sits in the environmental one. We'll get little project teams to do that. But generally, we're talking about it all the time across the business, and then specifically we get people involved to tackle a project that will help us move the dial.
Okay. And then the question that everyone always wants to know: how long did it take you?
Less time, and it was less awkward than I think other people find it, because we had the foundations in place.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of the policies already there. As I say, because our foundations were in place. The biggest thing we did was change our governance. So we changed our shareholding agreement to reflect the impact that we were going to make, and that was A, the most expensive, obviously, because it involved the solicitors, and B, took the longest amount of time. But the whole process took about 18 months, but for the lion's share of that, we were doing nothing. It was the time that it took for the B Corp, as it was then, to be able to actually do the accreditation process.
Yeah.
So so it probably took us about 3 or 4 months. And then I don't know whether this is naughty or not, but this is what we did. But we decided to answer questions in such a way that we knew that we could evidence while we were going through that 18-month wait period, because they're quite upfront about how long it takes to accredit you. So things like getting the governance in place, we did as we waited. So we scored ourselves, assuming that we did it. And then, excuse me, as we were waiting to be accredited, we actually went through the process of changing our shareholders agreement. So we did that on 3 or 4 things. And that would always be my advice to people. Whether you can do that in the new system now, I'm not sure. But that would be my advice, where you're committed to make changes and you're going to introduce new policy and you're going to introduce new ways of working. Do that alongside of that really long wait, because you're literally doing nothing while you're waiting for B Corp to review your information. Yeah,
for sure. I think some of them are details about what's happened in the last fiscal year that are evidence based on things that have actually happened.
That's right.
that has to be the case, and other things that you can do that you commit to doing. And as we said, we don't know what's going to happen with the new standards, but we'll wait and see. So tell me about some highs. What positives have you experienced either going through it or since?
So probably a couple of highs. High is certainly the community of people that are out there, and I think we could do a whole lot more in that world, in terms of meeting other like-minded agencies, so within our industry, but also we're starting to meet other clients in that space who have our shared values. So that's an absolute high. I think the high, the second one is just around that recognition, because for us it just recognised our position in terms of being a good employer and a good business. So you know, that's a very personal high for me, that we got that recognition, that the way that we were running the business, you know, was ethical and was focused on the impact that we were going to have in our community, you know, not only our industry of a community, but the wider Manchester community. So that's an absolute high. And then just, you know, the high of bringing the team together around certain initiatives, it absolutely gives you that platform.
Okay, and then what about challenges, the sort of the hard bits, or anything that you've struggled with?
Well, I can't say we struggle with anything. I think the thing that I thought it would do more of is open more doors, and whether that's a function of us not pushing hard enough that way, or that it just hasn't done that. It gives you a shortcut. So in our world, procurement tenders are a thing, and obviously B Corp accreditation gives you a leg up, is probably the easiest way to describe it, from an ESG viewpoint. So when we're answering the ESG questions, we've got systems in place, we've got benchmarks in place, you know, we've got all of the evidence that we need to be able to answer those. So that's actually part of the highs. But actually, I thought from a commercial viewpoint, which was one of the motivations for doing it in the first instance, I thought we'd get more from it. I thought there'd be more people knocking on our door going, "Oh, you're B Corp, we want a B Corp partner," and that hasn't quite happened. And if you reflect on that, I think that's because it's a value rather than a capability. And so when you think about how clients procure agencies, marketing agencies in our case, they're procuring on capability and values. And I naively thought, actually, you'd just lose you wouldn't worry with the capability. It would be, no, we're shared values. And that doesn't always, that hasn't manifested itself for us so far.
Sometimes not as tangible or measurable as well, because you sometimes don't know that someone somewhere has chosen you because you're a B Corp, because they haven't expressly said it.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. And we've got found, for, you know, weirdly, the B Corp system, as I said at the beginning, we're female founded, female owned and founded. And we've had people come to us through B Corp, though, because we're female founded, which I thought was really odd. Don't know, you know, that's obviously an important part for some brands, but yeah, weird.
Yeah. And what about any? We have talked before this session about how B Corp's transformed your business, and you were telling me about how it was almost gratification that you were doing so many of these things right, and a framework to show that you were.
Yeah.
But have you had anything transformative? I particularly like what you said there about your monthly meetings. Is it sunshine meetings?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the impact can be things like that you put in place to make continual improvements to the business.
Yeah, I suppose where it's been more transformative, I mean, we work in a industry where you can have very little impact. Your clients are having a much greater impact than you are. So because we're in a leased building, we have no control over energy supplier or you know, the real energy consumption issues that you've got. So really, you've only got travel, and then you've obviously got your own supply chain. And so we were always trying to find ways of improving our kind of sustainability credentials. And so that's probably the most transformative thing that we've done, is what we secure, what we buy is now completely different than we did before. You know, just it's the lots of little things that we've changed. You know, the loo roll, the kitchen roll, it's all of those little things. And thinking about, you know, making sure that we're buying locally. We change the way that we you know, who we buy lunch for, from all sorts of things, you know, little things, as I say, from lunches for those sunshine days to which suppliers we use. We try and be Manchester centric rather than going to London for some of the services that we used to do. So that thinking has transformed it. We've definitely become more local from that perspective, and much more conscious in terms of our buying decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it is those because there's a framework, and you certify on a certain level, and then you continually have whatever your sunshine meeting equivalents are. You make marginal gains, marginal improvements.
That's right.
So over time, the effect is quite huge, but it's hard sometimes to take a step back and realize all those
right.
things. Yeah,
that's right. And I think for us, that's the you know, the environmental score is the lowest by far of all of them. You know, the other ones are much higher, and there's nothing we can do. You know, when you go through that framework, which we've just gone through, to go back, you know, to go through the impact score, our impact report, we've gone back through that, and we can barely move the dial because we don't have any control over the building.
Yeah, it is a challenge for particularly professional services businesses in leased buildings. So, for example, if I work with a solar panel company, their environment section opens up to many more questions. So there are potential many more points to be made. So I know the challenge is there. Tell me about your impact report then. So what form does it take? Because people often ask that, like, do you do it on, is it a PDF? Is it a video? Or how do you show your impact report?
Ours is a PDF because that's the way that we chose to write it. We reviewed what other agencies had done and what other businesses had done, and also the B Corp team themselves give you some fairly clear direction on what they want to see. And I suppose because we're a communication agency, we actually do understand how to write these things generally. And so I wrote it. I used the system. And I think that's a bit that's unclear about it. So we basically rescored ourselves, and we a year on. So that's the process that we went through. We rescored ourselves to see where we'd made improvements, and we also looked for opportunities to increase our score by going back through that impact. So we literally went through it question by question. And then it was actually quite a lovely experience because we reflected on what we'd achieved before. So we captured what we'd achieved, the big things on each of the 5 areas, and then identified 12 new initiatives that we wanted to work on that we thought would help us shift the dial. And we're not massively shifting. I think our original score was 89 point something or other 0.6, and our new target score is only about 96, 96, 97. And that's primarily because we score really highly on some things where we've delivered it, like a customer. We score 5 out of 5. We can't shift that dial any further. And we can't shift the dial on sustainability, on the environmental one, because we don't own our own buildings. So it's just finding those small things that you can do to move the dial. But but those other things constantly need to be there. So I think it's not losing sight of the fact that, you know, things like our DE&I policy, things like our work in the community, just have to keep going. You know, and you want to keep them going because that's part of what you've built your business around.
Yeah. And just to say, going from 89 point something to 96 is no mean feat.
It feels quite small, doesn't it? It's only like, you know, barely a 10% increase.
When you see the number of points allocated to each thing being 0.0 whatever it is,
I know
how many points that is. So well, thank you so much. I think just to finally say then, to share with anyone who wants to go through this journey as an agency, what would be the one tip you'd give them?
One tip, that's interesting. So my one tip, and as I say, I don't know where they are in that accreditation process, is do the impact assessment quickly,
Mm.
and without much consideration, as in you can work through it really, really quite quickly, and then think about what your benchmark score is. So it depends what that benchmark score is, but if you were close to the 80 like we were, you really can work out what the big things are that will make a difference and help you do it. And those big things that will enable you to get the score also have a big impact on community, on society, on workers. So I think it's doing that impact assessment as quickly as you possibly can. Then it gives you the focus and the framework to to really focus on the things that matter, because the scores reflect what matters.
I think that's a really good tip, and I don't think people really realise that it's a free tool. You can play around with it. You don't have to be finished to do it. You know, it's an accessible.
I think that's and I think that's it. And that's what we realised quite quickly, that we didn't have to be finished, and particularly because of that time frame. I don't know whether that's changed now, but it enabled you, to give you the focus, and actually gave you the time to be able to do it.
Yeah, well, there are 300,000 applications sitting in that BIA portal as of right now. So hopefully, lots of people are now playing around with it just to see where they sit.
And the other thing is that even people don't do the B Corp assessment, it does tell you what's important, and you can see what's important, and you can see what's important against the the other ESG initiatives that are around. And it helps you as a business navigate what you need to do. So as a strategic planning tool, it's actually really, really useful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. And I'm sure lots of people will get lots from it. So thank you so much.
Oh, no worries, Laura. Thank you.
Take care. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.